Hey everybody, welcome. We have one of my favorite coaching clients on here, Colton Davidson. Colton, welcome. Why don't you share with everybody a little bit about how long you've been in the business and what you've done so far in the past year with your business. Tell us a little bit about you.
So I've been in the business about 5 years fully now. I've recently been coaching with Marianne now for about a year or so, I think.
Yep.
And I've pretty much doubled my entire business of GCI working with Marianne. So I appreciate Marianne every day. I look forward to speaking with her every Wednesday. She's a hard ass, but she makes it work. And clearly my life's been great so far since I've had her in my life. So she's a really good friend of mine and I love her to death.
I love hearing that. That is like amazing. I love when coaching clients are like that. I will also give full credit. Colton is one of the most coachable people that I've ever actually worked with. He's just like a sponge and he's really hard on himself, which is not a bad quality in coaching. But equally, you know what, he also puts his personal priorities first, which is something that's really important to me as well. So one of the things that we're interviewing Colton about today, and the reason why we're sharing this with everybody, is Colton recently, we get asked a lot of times about client appreciation events or, unique things to do and how do we get our database or how do we re-engage with people and how do we farm an area. And I really get tired of hearing the same old boring stuff. So Colton came up with a really cool out of the box idea. And I kind of want to ask him a few questions around it. So Colton, why don't you share with us the concept of the Beaver Tail event that you did and tell us a little bit of a background, where it came from, and how you put it together. Let's hear.
So I always do, I have a farming community that I do. I email or send out about 15,000 postcards a month to this community. Every year it brings back about 6 figures in GCI for the past 3 years or so. So every July or so, I do an outdoor movie night. Unfortunately, due to COVID, I wasn't able to do that. So I kind of had to think outside the box and create an idea that brought people together, but not necessarily all at once kind of thing. And I've heard from a few agents in Toronto that they're like, hey, why don't you do a Beaver Tail event? So I basically put it together in less than 3 weeks, and it was a huge success. So first of all, I sent out the 10,000 postcards. I said, hey, everyone pretty much knows me as well because of my farm. But I sent out 10,000 postcards about the event, just saying, hey, keep posted for this event. And then I sent out another 10,000 kind of explaining what that event is going to be. Mm-hmm. I did a Facebook Live event about a week before the event. And then I also kind of personally called people in the event as well. And I used to personally live in that event, or personally used to live in that community as well. So people kind of know me from there as well. So it was a huge hit. I gave out around 300 gingerbreads.
You mean or gingerbreads or beaver tails?
Beaver Tails, sorry. I did a gingerbread giveaway in December. I personally walked 300 gingerbread houses to the community. So that was another one that I did, which was another huge hit. But yeah, the Beaver Tails was huge. I gave out 300 Beaver Tails, 6 listing appointments, and 3 signed future listings that people are going to work with me. And it just continues to grow. I receive calls pretty much once a week or so now that people are just like, hey, I heard you're Colton Davidson and I want you to come over and pretty much list my house. So if you do things for the community and give back, they will treat you with respect as well.
I couldn't agree more. So let's talk a little bit about how did you give out the Beaver Tails? Like, did you Google Beaver Tails? And by the way, those of you who are American watching this, Beaver Tails are not actual beaver tails. They're like I want to warn you, I had somebody ask me the other day, I was talking about Colton and his initiative, and they're like, well, what's a beaver tail? Like, why would you eat a beaver's actual tail? They're not. They're dough.
They're a dough with sugar. They're delicious.
Deep fried in sugar.
Deep fried in sugar. Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, like my favorite is the one with garlic butter on it. I'm all over that. I'm like, but if you ever come to Canada, you got to get a beaver tail.
Mine's Reese's Pieces.
Oh my gosh, like honestly, they're just nasty. Like as an athlete myself, I'm like, when we have beaver tails, I'm like, we always incorporate something athletic around it so we can earn it. So let me ask you a question. Where did you Google how to buy mass quantities of beaver tails? Like, how did you find a beaver tail company? Like what was that?
There's actually, I didn't know this, but there's a beaver tail truck and an ice cream truck within Kitchener-Waterloo. And they actually have a 3-hour radius outside of Kitchener-Waterloo that no one can kind of jump into. So I personally couldn't go open up a food truck, basically just start my own food truck company delivering or basically handing out beaver tails. So it's kind of like a McDonald's, right? You can't have a McDonald's side by side. Same thing with beaver tails. So I literally just searched on Facebook and I said beaver tails, and they came up, and she's been a sweetheart. She's amazing.
Wow. So did she physically bring a truck to a location?
Yeah. So
No
they have
way.
a massive like beaver tail truck, and it just says beaver tails, and that's what they basically bring. That's what they bring with them. So they all set it up, and they just have a truck, like an ice cream truck. It's basically just a beaver tail truck.
That is like amazing. So let me ask you some questions that everybody's going to want to know. What was the cost involved?
So the cost involved from start to finish, including postcards and the event, was probably around $3,500.
Nice. So $3,500, and you got such like amazing return. 3 listings in the bank for that. So that's probably anywhere from 10 to 15K per. So really a great return. It cost you 10%. And you got a massive return on that. Like that's unbelievable return on your investment. Now, let me also ask you a question. Did you require people to register beforehand so you knew how many beaver tails, or no?
So that's the hard thing. Even with my outdoor movie night, it's hard to like tell people to come to the event. So I just kind of literally ordered 300, or I ordered 200 to start, and then I just paid for the 100 extra. If people showed up, I kind of just was like, hey, I don't want to turn you away, so whatever. So no, everyone just kind of showed up. Some people signed up, but I think only like a handful, 5 people actually signed up when I emailed them out.
Oh,
but
wow.
People just started like showing up, and I'm like, uh-oh, I only have 200. So the beaver tails like, you're close to 200. I'm like, okay, well, let's do another 100. And it just kind of went from there. So yeah, it was huge and so much fun, and I met so many people.
And so what did you like, how did you brand yourself at the beaver tail? Because you collected a lot of people's contact information that actually you never had before, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so how many people?
So I collected about 62 names from the event.
Nice.
And I did that by asking them. I kind of had like a mini $100 giveaway. And I was like, hey, here's like a giveaway for this thing. Please sign into this app. And I also wanted to make sure it's pretty simple, because I wanted to make sure that they lived in the community. So I wanted to get their personal address. And then my admin after the event sent them all personal cards saying, hey, thanks for coming out to the event. So obviously people knew me that way as well. So it was fun. I mean, it was a great time. But as Marianne, when I coaching with her, she drills it down my throat that you need to do an event to get contacts. So I definitely crushed it. I got 64 or 67 contacts, and now they're pretty much in my database. I reach out to them once in a while, and any events now that I have in that community, I'll also now invent those or bring those people out to as well.
That's like amazing. And you know, the thing that to tell people who are listening or watching this is when you can get over 60 people who agree to be solicited by a realtor in your own farm area, that's a massive win. Like that's a massive win, because you can also get sponsors to contribute to that $3,500 overhead, right? You can like legitimately, you could go to any of your key partners and whatnot, and preferred partners, and say, hey, listen, you know, mortgage broker, you can be like, listen, I'm going to get a ton of exposure here, and there's opportunities for you. Do you want to go halfsies? Like you can actually do things like that for future events as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. I just thinking maybe in my next, like outside of that community, I think I would, but people know me. So they already know and trust me. So I think that's why they were comfortable giving their information, because they're like, hey, a lot of people were like showing up and they're like, hey, you're Colton, you're the agent. They're like, thanks for my gingerbread house in December. And I'm like, so people knew who I was.
And a lot of what I like about that is like, you know, you hear a lot of people who say, don't do events, or don't do this, or don't bring an ice cream truck, or don't do, you know, beaver tails. And they're just like, they're kind of like, oh, don't do stuff like that because you're not going to be seen as the professional in the area. Do you ever get worried about that you're like, I'm just going to be known as the guy that nobody's using, I'm just giving away gingerbread houses? Like, how do you incorporate both? Like, how do you be the knowledgeable person, but also at the same token be that generous guy?
I think it's just thinking outside the box and giving back to the community, right? Like as soon as you give back, people start to recognize that. And I mean, during COVID, like people were stuck at home. I thought it was going to get like a bad rap when I went and knocked on someone's door, but everyone was like, oh my God, how much is the gingerbread house? And I'm like, it's free. Like, it literally just want to bring some holiday cheer to the neighborhood. So that's kind of what I did for December. And then everything just kind of rolled from that. But it was great. I mean, you just in this business, you have to think outside the box, right? And there's things that, like, you obviously can tell agents, and people kind of know what I was doing, other agents, because they're like, hey, I saw your advertising stuff, but they're not going to do it. Like, they're not going to do it, right? So if you get up and do it, you'll be that top producing agent in the next, I would say, 5 years or so, which obviously has been my success in the business.
That's really ultimately, like, when you think about it, because I was thinking about your numbers, and the thing that impresses me the most was just how it rolled out, where you had 3 weeks, you put it together in 3 weeks. Not only did you get a return that was fantastic with the listings, but which is very hard to find. I mean, you get 3 listings in a seller's market. That's unbelievable, by the way. Like, really have to look at that. This is not a balanced market. This is not a buyer's market. This is a market where agents are really hungry for listings. You go outside the box, you do something that most people wouldn't even think about. You go put it together in 3 weeks, cost you $3,500. So you didn't sit on your wallet and go, oh, should I do it? Should I not do it? But then also that 60 plus people that you didn't have in your database that you now have in your database would have taken you a long time to door knock to get 60 something people. That would have taken you probably, I don't know, 4 months to get that many people. But then on the flip side too, what everybody has to remember is that database gives you a massive return. Like, though all those 60 something people have agreed to be contacted by you, they gave you their information. And furthermore, they each know 3 people per year that are going to actually have a return on your business. So they know referrals that are going to be coming down the pipeline, which is awesome. So I guess my thing is what do you do with those 60 something people now?
So those 60 people, I literally just kind of put on my monthly newsletter. I or my assistant reach out to them pretty much every 3 months, and anything like within that community as well. They're also on I added everyone on my Facebook page, so everyone kind of is on following my social media now, so they get to see more of my face now. And yeah, it's just really just keeping in touch with them now. But now that they're in my farm and in my community, they hear about me at least once or twice a month now.
That's amazing.
From some form of either advertising or personal contact.
That is amazing. So do you ever get concerned about liability with something like that? Like, what is the liability if you bring in a food truck of some sort and you do an event like that? Is there any liability issues that you had to think about? No, eh?
No liability. All I did was I told people under 16 they had to bring an adult with them because of the peanut allergy. So I had to watch the peanut allergy, but at least like everyone brought an adult. So obviously, I mean, a 12-year-old kid isn't buying a house either. So that was another easy way of being like, hey, I want your parents' information, right? So yeah.
What do you do if somebody comes and they're like, I'm not from the community at all. I was just driving by, I saw beaver tails and I was like, I want to buy one, but you're giving them for free. So I'm not in the community. I'm from out of town. What do you do?
I would still give them, but I know from that whole event, no one came from outside of that area. And
wow.
I actually know that for sure because I got everyone's personal address.
Love it. And where did you put the beaver tail truck? Did you have to put it in a location that was very visible? Like, I'm kind of curious.
So it was right on the main street, just basically across from where I do my movie night. It was kind of like a park. So people play at the park all the time. So as soon as they saw the beaver tail truck, they kind of knew what was going on, and it spread like wildfire through the wildflower community.
Listen, if I heard they were giving free beaver tails in my community, I'd be like, start the car, let's go. I'd be like all over that. And I would absolutely, like, I always ask myself, I'm like, would I give my contact information? So whenever I'm talking to people about lead generation ideas and whatnot, I'm always like, would I give my contact info? There is no doubt for a beaver tail, I would absolutely give all my contact information. I'd be like, sure, you can like solicit me all you want.
I don't know if I would do it differently again, but like there was a lot of kids that came out and brought beaver tails. So it was more like kids, like everyone that came, I gave them a beaver tail.
Yes.
Where if I think I gave it to one per family, I think I wouldn't have had to give so many out. But at the same time, it's an investment, right? So it's tough to say which way that would go if you're like, oh no, sorry kid, you can't have a beaver tail. You have to like share it with your parents. So I think spending that extra little money was a difference that I gave it to pretty much anyone that showed up with either kids or a family.
That's amazing because, when you think about it, it's like, because beaver tails are not cheap. So it's
They were
not like
$7 a beaver tail.
$7 a beaver tail. So like when you really think about it, and a lot of people think about this too. When was the last time? Okay, we spend a lot on social media ads, and you know what? I was talking to my assistant about this the other day. I said, you know what? If you're spending $3,500 and you're getting that type of return, where you're getting literally over $30-something thousand worth of GCI, and you're getting 60-something ads to your database for future business of 3 referrals a year, and like, it's crazy. And I said, how much do we actually spend on social media advertising where we're not actually even physically belly to belly with people? And here you are doing something like that, building your database, getting the returns, and also branding yourself in the neighborhood as a giver, not a taker. Which is a really popular concept during COVID and moving forward. And I thought, the amount of money we spend on social media advertising for literally almost no returns consistently, and you do something this creative, put together in 3 weeks, your returns are outstanding. I mean, it's really impressive. Very impressive.
I would do that. I would honestly do that like every month for what you spend on advertising. I mean, for the success it had, you do one event, you get one listing, you're still making, you're not in the hole at all.
You're not in the hole at all. So final words. What would you suggest to anybody who's on the fence with something like this? What's the advice that you would give them if they're on the fence about the expense and they're on the fence about whether they can pull something like this off?
My advice to them would be, give it a shot. Like, you spend a ton of marketing. Like, I've spent $3,500 on stupid other stuff. So, I mean, give it a shot, spend the money, try it out, and just see what happens. I mean, worst case scenario, you give beaver tails and nothing happens, but I'm confident 90% you're at least going to get one listing or one purchase out of that event that you do.
Absolutely.
If you do that, that's a win in my books.
I could not agree more. And the other thing also, guys, to think about is, you can, even if you get no return on it, but you get a great successful turnout, have photographer, have some videos taken, show people laughing and smiling in the community, go share those pictures and photos with the community Facebook site, put it on your own site and be like, look, we are definitely giver backers in the community. And you have something you can use in your listing presentations, your buyer presentations, your farming stuff. You can even do a postcard saying, hey, sorry, if you didn't make it, sorry, but here's some pictures from the event. It's amazing what you can do. So I think
it's pretty big in my listing package now. When I walk into a listing in that neighborhood, I'm like, hey, here's some things I do. They're like, oh yeah, I was at that event. So, right. So it's even a conversation starter when you show up to the door and they're like, hey, thanks for like the gingerbread house or the beaver tail or the outdoor movie. Like, people know who I am in that community. And that's huge. I just love it. It boosts my confidence for sure.
It really did. I mean, it's just fantastic. And anybody who might be questioning your production level, can you just maybe drop a little bit of a hint on your production level so far?
So this year, my production level is about 400, and my goal for the year is about $500,000. So last year I was at 180. So I've pretty much either doubled or tripled my business for the entire
Man, he's like crushing it. All I know is your future wife. Very lucky, very lucky.
Yeah,
very
I'm taking a 2-week Jamaican trip in October. So I got some goals to hit with Marianne before that, but
I love hearing this. So here's the final thing. If there's a lot of people who look for great agents who actually care like you do, so to refer their clients to. So give yourself a shout out of how we can find you, where you trade, and what brokerage you're with.
I'm with Davenport Realty. I'm in Kitchener-Waterloo, within an hour radius of Kitchener. My tagline for the Instagram is the Davidson Way. That's my last name, Colton Davidson. So if you want to get a hold of me, reach out. My phone number is 519-502-5049. And I wish you guys all the best in the future events that you create.
I love it. Thank you for sharing all this with us, Colton. It's the best information. And you know what? I think we're going to see beaver tails all over Ontario and Canada. Thanks again, Colton. We appreciate it.